Hey everybody, welcome back to Bags and Omens. This is episode 22. I'm your host Ryan, and today we're talking about the Eight of Wands. Real quick, if you're watching the video for this, sorry about the image quality. I don't know what's up. I've spent the last half hour or whatever trying to fix it, but for some reason it just wants everything to stay really, really blurry no matter what I do or don't do with my background lighting. All that. It's only if I put something like this freaking close to the camera, like right up next to it, that it even clears up. And as soon as I move it away, it's back to this blurry. So, meh. I'm just gonna have to be accurate with my descriptions, I suppose. All right. So, like I said, talking about the Eight of Wands today, which is I was listening to an episode of Weirdly Magical, listening to their most recent episode about the Pisces new moon. Well, today while I'm recording this on Saturday, and there was actually a lot of 8 energy in it, and it seemed actually fairly relevant to this, but now I can't quite remember off the top of my head. But that was actually a really good episode, so check out Weirdly Magical by Jen and Lou. They know their shit. One's an astrologer, one's an Akashic record numerology master, and yeah, they know a lot of stuff. But anyway, I can't remember if I introduced myself. Hi, I'm Ryan. AM air pronouns. And yeah, we're talking about the Eight of Wands today. Birdies will hopefully be a little bit quieter. I need to try to make sure I cover them up because people have pointed out that they're pretty annoying, and yeah, they can be. I was listening to the Five Wands episode, and I wasn't in a great place with my misophonia at the time, so even my own voice was driving me insane. So yeah, but hopefully, our city library heard a rumor that they may be trying to open completely next month, so I might be able to get a room there to record in. And I'm actually considering going back over some of my older episodes and maybe redoing all of them so that they've got better sound quality and without the background noise. And now that I know a bit more stuff to add onto it, I want to kind of revamp them. But we'll see when that comes around, if I can get around to it, if I can get it done. Maybe at the completion of the Wands, which I actually have it written in here. So we'll finish up with the Wands all the way through the court cards. Right a little bit past a year doing this. The last one, the King of Wands, will be in September, so maybe a little sooner than that, maybe around the Ten of Wands. That's only a couple months. That's in May. But we'll see. Depends on when things kind of get back to open. Alright. But, alright, that's all that. Let's dive into the Eight of Wands. So, first up, I know you really can't see it, but, except for a very blurred picture. I'm going to use my Good Tarot Eight of Fire for this. We have a young feminine-looking person, kind of ghostly, not quite it looks like pre-adolescent, preteen person, in a traditional, given the fact that they're riding a panda, given the fact she's riding a panda, I'm going to assume Chinese traditional dress. It just kind of looks like a kimono in general, and she's holding a big-ass fan in front of her, so it's usually the top that you can tell which of those Eastern Asian cultures it's from, and, well, there's a giant fan in the way, so, traditional garb, riding a panda, in front of a thicket of bamboo, like, very tall bamboo. You can't even see the leaves, and then there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, there are 7 lanterns floating around above her and the panda. She's holding the 8th one in her hand. I know you can't see it because the picture is shit for some reason. But yeah. So that's the the 8 of fire from the Good Tarot. And so the 8 in numerology is the most active spiritual number. So we have 3 different types of numbers in Pythagorean numerology. We have they're separated in categories of physical, mental, and spiritual. So 2, 3. Oh no, sorry. Physical, spiritual, mental. So like 1, 4, 4, 5, 6. 1, 4, and 7 are all physical numbers, and then 2, 5, and 8 are spiritual numbers, and then 3, 6, and 9 are the mental numbers. So 8 is the last spiritual number in the 1 through 9. I forget I can't think of the word. Sequence. That's what it is. The 1 through 9 sequence. 8 is the last spiritual number, which makes it so basically the 1 starts at the lowest rank, and the 9 is the highest. So 8. So we're going up, and we're ascending in levels basically. So 8 is the highest spiritual number. And it is also because those last 3 numbers, 7, 8, and 9, are the highest. They're also basically the end of the plane. So 8 is this. It's situated at they're one end of the plane that's the active end. So whereas 1, 2, and 3 would be like very self-centered. 7, 8, and 9 are when it's like outwardly centered. So it's the active end of the soul plane in this case. It's also the number of wisdom expressed intuitively through loving action. It's sorry, I'm reading my notes here. Yeah, so due to its dual influence in spiritually, it's the number of wisdom, and it's the physical number of independence. So it's got a duality in spiritual wise, because 4 is one of the main physical numbers. It's like that solid square structure. We've talked about it before. It's represented by a square. 8 kind of looks like 2 squares stacked on top of each other. Now, granted, they're rounded, obviously, but if you use a little imagination, they look like 2 squares. So it's a double influence of that physical. However, they're also still in the soul plane, in the spiritual plane, and they represent wisdom and intuition through loving action. It also, interestingly enough, brings independence into focus. So while the 8 is very socially conscious, it's probably very closely a number like similar to Aquarius, the zodiac sign, which if you go back a couple episodes, I just covered Aquarius. But it's that dual focus of independence and individuality coupled with social conscious and loving interaction. And an 8 as the general number, that the energy of the 8 is detailed and tidy, and it's that double 4 influence, because 4 plus 4 equals 8, is great at adding on that detailed and tidy. That's what makes it so detailed and tidy. It adds emphasis on the focus of detail and practicality and being very grounded, down to earth. So it's a very grounded, down to earth spiritual number. But it helps because it is a higher spiritual number. It brings that grounded, earthy 4-ness up to a higher consciousness level. That's where we get you see where it's very much a very dual nature of 2 different elements. It's grounded and earthy, practical and physical, but it's also higher consciousness focused, very spiritual and loving and giving. and collective focus. And that's also why the 8 turned on its side is the symbol for infinity, or the symbol for infinity turned on its side is the number 8. In Arabic numerals, anyway. Alright, so, and then if we wanted to kind of apply, that actually works very well for this card. So if we want to bring that 8, the number 8, and we bring it into this card with the Good Tarot, we can see, well, you might not be able to, but we can see because there is very much an earth element all in here. It's a young girl on a panda, which is very much a slow creature of the earth. It's a bear, basically, or a type of bear, a subspecies of bear, I don't know. And therefore, bears are very connected to the earth. I don't know about pandas specifically, but they're slower moving. They're very grounded, earthy. They're earthy in general. And bamboo, bamboo is a plant. However, bamboo's element is actually fire, which makes it kind of perfect for the wands, the fire element. So we have that fire coming up out of the earth, and bamboo stretches towards the sky, which we can metaphorically take to reaching for attaining higher levels of consciousness. Plus, we've got lanterns of light. Lanterns are they light our way, and these specific types of lanterns, the round ones that get filled with air, they're I'm not sure where I've heard this before, but I'm fairly certain that I have heard it before, that one of the uses for that floating lantern type deal is, and this might have been I really cannot honestly for the life of me remember where I heard this or if I just made it up or something, but using that as a container to carry wishes to the gods, to heaven, and such like that, like saying a prayer or a wish into the lantern and then releasing it to be carried up by the wind and granted by a higher power. So again, that earthy groundedness and that wish and reaching for achievement of higher level, that attainment, that reaching for attainment. I've got the word attainment stuck in my head for some reason with this card. But yeah, so that's kind of where we can see the 8 and tie it into this card. So next section, the fire. How is the element of fire expressed in the 8 of Wands? Because I'm using fire for wands is how I read the elements of tarot. Wands correspond to fire. So for that I have my Tarot of the Old Path, the 8 of Rods, and we've got a not quite a peasant woman, so medieval peasant type deal. I honestly would not say that she's a peasant type. Her dress is too nice. Her hair wrap that's got her hair up and a crown around her head is... she's maybe the housekeeper for a noble family or wealthy family. It seems more like the housekeeper of some big house. Her clothes are just too nice to be peasant or lower servant, but not nice enough to actually be nobility. Not to mention, she is also holding a broom, a very old-fashioned like stick broom with where it had the stick and the long thin dried willow sticks that you use, and basically not a very actually efficient broom, but in old style, what we would mostly use now is a decorative besom, or a decorative broom for around the fall, or as a more spiritual work besom, basically. And she's holding one of these, and she's looks like she's getting ready to set it loose to fly with the other 7, 4, 5, 6, 7, other 7 brooms that are already up in the air and flying away, in the midst of a flock of birds, which I'm gonna guess are sparrows. Relevance on that is lost on me at the moment. I should have looked that up. But the important thing here is first off, she's dressed in red, which, of course, red passion, lust, fieriness, bold, courage, blood, all those similar type forms of words, that form of energy, that fiery, passionate energy. So she's wearing red, which kind of speaks to the energy. She's releasing the brooms or pushing them to fly. So she's sending them out. So the kind of the energy of fire I get with this card, with the Eight of Wands, is a fire that is meticulous and deliberate and organized, but it is also fast and powerful. Almost kind of like a lightning strike. And, I mean, you think lightning strike, you're like, wait, what? That's, like, all chaotic. But if you think about it, because lightning strikes are all kind of jagged all over the place and whatever, but if you think about it, the way electricity works is it literally it wants to take the easiest path first off. Everything in physical existence tries its best to take the easiest route. Unless you're a stubborn human that wants to fight through muck because it's a straight diagonal shot instead of going all around. And yeah, anyway. But so lightning goes the easiest path it can take. So what it's doing is it's that electricity is figuring out a path between all the different air molecules, the ground molecules, to get where it wants to go. And it's got to, like, know that path, like, right away. Not quite right away, but basically it's got to find that path very fast while it's moving. However, it goes so fast that we just see it as one big boom, and there's this jaggedy lightning strike. But what's happened in super fucking slow speed is it starts at one point and it goes, and it's meticulous and deliberate, going all down the different jaggedy paths to where it wants to go, and it's like finding its path straight down, and it's instantaneous. So that's kind of the fire I get with this card, is it's very fast, very powerful, because it's still fire. But in this case, it's moving quickly, but it's still deliberate. It's meticulous. It knows exactly what it wants to do, exactly where it wants to go, and it's eye on the prize, go type deal. That's kind of the fire with this. So we can see that especially in this card, because this woman, she is aiming those brooms. Like, she's like, okay, I want this broom to fly here, and I'm going to let it go now, and I want this broom to fly here, and that one to go there. And she's lined all these brooms up, and she's letting them loose one at a time, and she's got a specific goal for them in mind. They're going somewhere specific. So it's meticulous, it's deliberate, it's organized, and she's sending these off with a bang, basically. So that's kind of that's the energy of the fire I get from the Eight of Wands. All right, next up, our first half of our astrology, the Celestial deck. And in this deck we have, luckily this one's fairly plain. It's just a giant stone altar that's with a fire on it that's kind of whizzing down through space. You wouldn't think an altar could a giant stone block altar could whiz, but I think it's whizzing. And it's got the symbols for Sagittarius and Mars on it. So in the Celestial, the constellation associated with the Eight of Wands is Era, the altar. And they're the Mars and the Sagittarius symbols. So basically, in the Celestial deck, they equate this card to Mars in Sagittarius. So Mars, the warrior, the impassioned endeavor, go, go, go. In the sign of Sagittarius, the expander, the explorer, the philosopher, the learner, basically the warrior in the explorer. The warrior expressed through the explorer. And the aspect associated with this, also a quick note, is a semi-square, which is a 45-degree angle. So basically when two planets are 45 degrees apart from each other, which is it's half of a square. So a square, as we know, is kind of a tense butting of heads, like they want to go their own way. But they're not full opposition as they can get along. Square is I can't even meet you because we're not even parallel or whatever. 45 degrees, a semi-square, is a half square. It's kind of just a blocked energy that comes from emotional and psychological influences of two planets. So it's just kind of a blocked energy. It's a little tense. It's not quite as stubborn as a full square, but a semi-square is still... Those are blocks in our psyche that we have to kind of overcome. Which goes along well with this, because Era is the altar on which is burned the sacrifice of unnecessary things that have held us back. An altar it's the centerpiece of the holy ground, of sacred ground, of holy ground. It's an entrance to a sacred time, a place of sacrifice and offerings. At our altars, we go there to work, to sacrifice to our gods, or basically our higher powers that we believe in. We go there to work, to pray, devotional, to do devotional work, to pray to the higher powers we believe in, whatever they may be. And it's also tradition in place, of course, of sacrifice and offerings, like I said. It's where you're like, I need something, so I will give this up in order to do it. So that works well with the Mars and Sagittarius, where it's that warrior the Sagittarius part wants to learn, wants to explore, wants to expand and go places. But to enable to get places, it's probably going to have to sacrifice something. That warrior in Mars has that discipline to go, okay, I need to get rid of this in order to be able to do this other thing. A warrior is it tends to be very disciplined and know when it's time to give something up to gain something else. So Era is the altar. It's and when we go to an altar, we enter a sacred space and a sacred time, and time kind of outside of time. So in this card, in the Celestial deck, when this one comes up, it's very much, in order to move forward, you have to break through something. You have to break free from something. You have to burn what's holding you back on the altar of sacrifice so you can move forward and push through. Which, honestly, I don't always agree with the Celestial deck with some stuff. Sometimes it's like, that just barely kind of fits in there. But this one, I think, actually does go well with the rest of the meaning of the card. And it even works alright with the next part, which is the other half of the astrology in the tarot, which comes from the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. So I got my Gilded Tarot for this, and it's just 8 wands flying through the air over a pasture filled with sheep and trees, and off into a partly cloudy sky with a sunset, maybe a sunrise. It's one of those liminal times of space, but anyway, the main picture is the 8 wands flying through the air. The background is slightly more interesting than most cards, I suppose, but meh. So in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn astrology, the 8 of Wands is actually associated with Mercury and Sagittarius. So we're still in Sagittarius, obviously. We're still in the third half, but instead of in the second decan, we're in the first decan, and which basically just means it's slightly newer energy than the middle one. It's not quite as fixed, it's slightly newer. And we have the Chaldean order of the planets instead of I'm not sure, not exactly in order. We're in a Chaldean order of planets instead of a based on elements order. So it's Mercury and Sagittarius instead of Mars. So where Mars is kind of brute force physical warrior type, Mercury is swift, the messenger. This is where we have that, instead of it being like okay, I'm big buff warrior and I want to go and explore and expand, and kind of deliberately, Mercury is in Sagittarius would be like that bright-eyed kid who's probably got triple ADHD. Okay, that's not actually a thing. But basically the ADHD of like, oh my gosh, I've got so many things I want to learn, I want to do, I want to go. You just, somebody who just like, you're like, put on the, do you even have brakes? No, they don't have brakes. Mercury is the messenger god, the Roman messenger god. He's basically as swift as a thought. It was his duty to go in between different gods, in between the gods and the humans, and even the cart the humans down to the underworld as a cycle pump. But anyway, he was a messenger. He was a go-between. He went between people, and he was fast as thought. And this is Mercury, the swift messenger, in the sign of long-distance travel, philosophy, and higher education. So this is someone who just wants to... This card is more of somebody who just wants to freaking go. Just wants to learn all the things all at once and just go without stopping. Which is why in the Golden Dawn, this card's title was the Lord of Swiftness. This one, Mercury in Sagittarius is a spiritual message in physical form. And Sag is always happy to broadcast messages to the world. So we have that messenger, the Mercury, that just wants to go. And Sagittarius, Mercury, just wants to spread that message everywhere. Like, not just to specific people, but wants to, like, print it in a freaking newspaper. Put it on the internet, or videotape and put it on the internet. Like I'm doing. And it's very much this in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. This is more focused on the swiftness of the and a message. So if we were to apply that to the Eight of Wands in this card, it would just be that, a message. Message is coming very quickly. It's showing up here soon. It's probably actually going to come from somebody, from some an actual physical. It's going to come in a physical form. It's not going to be a thought you have in your head. It's going to be, you open a book and you see it just staring at you in the face, or somebody says something, or you overhear something, and so on and so forth. A message in physical form. So that's another way to read the Eight of Wands. Is it's a message that's coming very quickly. So, oof, checking through this. All right. That's our numerology, our fire, our elements, and our astrology. So let's get into the Kabbalah. So for the Kabbalah, I have my Hush Tarot, Eight of Wands, and this one we have a feminine form, human, most likely naked, it looks like. But all we can see is kind of the top from the mid-chest up. Well, not mid-chest, upper chest up. And the arms. Just kind of lying in a field of grass and dying flowers. And now, probably not fully human, given the fact that right under her neck is kind of like this weird opening that looks like a split that has a wasp nest in it. So, probably not actually human. But she's kind of lying with her hands over her head, eyes closed. And then she's got very tall flowers growing up around her. And on top of all those flowers are a bunch of red cardinals. And one brown cardinal. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 male cardinals and one poor female cardinal that's like, got all these dumbasses around me. She's also the only one the female cardinal's the only one with her mouth. Well, no, one of the other males doesn't have his mouth open, but she's just kind of like looking over her shoulder like, okay, all these boys, getting annoying. No, not you. But, so we have a bunch of cardinals sitting on flowers over top of this asleep, possibly not human person's head, who has a wasp nest inside her body. So one of the things I like about this deck is it's just so macabre. So in Kabbalah, the Eight of Wands, the eights in general are associated with the Sephiroth of Hod, which means glory or splendor. Hod is located in the Olam Yetzirah, or the realm of formation, so the very bottom triangle on the Tree of Life, and it is on the right side, I believe, when you're facing it. Hod refers to the logical thinking mind. So if you'll remember from last month, when we were talking about the Seven of Wands, we came across Netzach, or victory, which is very much creative expansion. Just I think, and slightly inaccurate terms, right brain, right? Yeah, right brain, creativity, expansion, just that art flowy thing, like I got a picture in mind, like, where they've got the bright primary colors that all kind of flow together and make this weird, loopy, dreamlike, whatever bright thing. And then you have that's supposed to represent the right brain, and then the other half of the picture is the left brain, quotes, where it's like all kind of grays and blacks, and there's straight lines, and it kind of looks like a bit like a wiring diagram / a motherboard / whatever. So, well, that left side, quote, is Hod, which has to do with the logical thinking part of our mind. It's the balance to Netzach, the creativity and expansion. It goes, okay, but can we actually do that? Can we actually put this into action? Can we put this into plan? Can we actually... It's the balance between the two. And that's the one thing with the Tree of Life, is there must always be balance with it. So, where Netzach is the ecstatic creative mind, Hod is the logical thinking mind. Hod is both the principle and the function of intellect, and it's associated with Mercury, go figure. It's a bit, what is it? Sudden explosion of intuition and knowing. So when combined, so the key phrase that I got from the book I was reading, the Tarot and the Tree of Life, when Hod was associated with the Eight of Wands specifically, she called it a sudden explosion of intuition and knowing. So fire is kind of intuitive, not necessarily as intuitive. It's more primal. It's instinct. So it's that instinctual suddenly, no, I know. I know how to act. And then the 8, the Hod, the logical, when you combine these all together, we get that a sudden explosion of intuition and knowing. It's where our primal brain meets our higher, our more cerebral brain, and they come together and they click and they go, got it. They do just the lines of code, because we're thinking more in the lines here, and more in the logical, critical, not the intuitive, knowing, flowing side. So with that 8 of Wands, the 8 of Wands in the fire, we've got the swiftness, the movement of Mercury. It's, again, that messenger, that swift moving energy. And then Hod is strict, logical, computer quick thinking. So this is where our minds is more in the computer type deal, where things move just real freaking fast. Just click, 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 click. Where we get it. We know it. We understand it. It doesn't feel quite the same as other intuition. There's still that intuitive knowing, because our intuition kind of influences everything. But it doesn't always feel quite the same as, oh, I know. I know. It's more direct. So, if we're thinking Kabbalah with this card in specific, from the Hush Tarot, we've got this person lying on the ground, kind of asleep. So we've got kind of that restful, it's not quite restful. What this card really makes me think of, when taken as a whole, we've got the person lying on the ground and the birds chattering up above. It makes me think of when you're lying in bed and your mind just will not shut up. When you're trying to sleep and your brain just won't turn off, and it's going a million miles a minute with all kinds of things, and you're sitting there thinking, you're like, oh, I should have said this, I should have said that, I should have done that, I should have actually done this or that, I should have gone there, god damn it, why did I forget that? It's all the stuff. It's when you finally got, it's basically that point where you finally got a still moment, and your brain can go, okay, I need to catch up on everything, and you're like, but I just want to sleep. But your brain needs that time to work through everything. Interesting side note, that is why why a lot of people tend to have trouble with meditation, because they can't turn their brains off, quote. Because you're finally giving your brain space to think. So when you first start meditation, or even sometimes when even if you've been doing it for a long time, and every now and again, sometimes you'll just like, I cannot get my brain to shut up and focus. Well, have you given your brain time to think recently, like within the last couple of days or week or however long? Your brain needs time to process stuff. So this card very much speaks to me of the brain in process. It's like the body is finally taking a fucking break. You're not actually doing anything right now. So your brain is like, okay, time to get all the paperwork done. We've got a mess in here. We got to file. We got to finish signing these papers, filling out these reports, file everything away, and get this place cleaned the fuck up. That's one of the feelings that this card kind of exemplifies. It's like, it's time to take a fucking break from your body and let your brain just go nuts. Let it clean everything up, get everything done, follow down every freaking rabbit trail, go down, loop back trails around. It's like, it's time to process everything. So with Hod as an influence, with Hod as an influence in the Kabbalah, we can also see this card as not necessarily just energy and moving swiftness. It's like we've had different aspects we've already seen, like in the astrology, with it being a message. It's like, okay, a message, a physical message maybe, but also sometimes we can come up with, sometimes maybe it's time for your body to take a break so your brain can process everything. That's another aspect of this card that could come up in a read. It's like, just shut your body down, let the wasps... Okay, you know what, I'm not going to say that. Just let your body take a fucking break because you're exhausted, and let your mind declutter. It's time to clean up. Whether you're meditating, you're just sitting down for 5 minutes, because sometimes 5 minutes is all you really need. And if you can even take a break for just 5 minutes, that helps your brain so much. Even if you can't get everything decluttered, it's still that break. It's like, if you can't fall asleep, that's more of a problem. Sometimes it can be even harder to shut your brain off during that time. So if you can take a break more during the day to or try to go to bed, air quotes, slightly earlier, so you can just kind of sit and process for a half an hour or something, and then as you wind down, like take 20 minutes to 30 minutes before bed to get yourself a cup of tea, and just while you're making the tea, while you're heating up the water, putting the bag and drinking it, just let your brain ramble. And that gives you that time before bed for it to ramble, so you can actually go to bed without it trying to, oh, we're done? Okay, let me get to writing all this shit. Because that's no fun. That's no fun. Granted, we don't always do that. It's just, I mean, hell, I don't always do that. And then I end up sitting there like, I've been awake for 3 hours, and I'm still wide awake, and I need to sleep. We've all been there, done that. It sucks. As you can fit in time throughout your day, once a week even, to just let your brain do its processing, because our brains need time to integrate stuff. Yeah, that's definitely a message that wants to come through for this card, interestingly enough. Alright, so, and that really didn't have much to do with Hod in specific, which is hilarious. Also, I am okay. Anyway, I did at least talk about HOD Splendor for a little bit. And honestly, there's not a whole lot on it, interestingly enough, with these last... I don't think there was a lot on NetSec, too, either. Alright, but continuing kind of our Kabbalistic theme, we're going to finish that out with the Kabbalistic Angel from the Angel Tarot. And the angel is... You know what, I just realized this one didn't give me... what hierarchy this one was in. But anyway, okay, so I don't have the hierarchy for this angel. So, Vehuel, the great and exalted god, very grandiose, very grandiose. Which, funnily enough, the keyword for this card is grandeur, grandeur. I think it's grandeur. Yeah, it's grandeur. So the great and exalted god. So we've got a kind of an angelic being kind of flying, definitely a musician, playing a violin or a viola. Probably a violin. Nobody draws violas. Yeah, it's a violin. It's too small to be a viola. But anyway, playing a violin, walking along with their eyes closed, kind of in rapture. Well, they're kind of more flying along. I don't think you could walk like that. With both legs back and on tippy toes, both of them kind of up the ground. Yeah, that's probably flying. So Vehuel, the great and exalted God, their psalm is Psalm 145:3. So again, their keyword is grandeur. And they assist in overcoming sorrow and contrariness. Which is a hilarious thing. It's like, is everybody getting into 1800s talk lately or something? And they provide exaltation of oneself. The other kind of keyword on the card itself is makes one passionate toward God. I'm sure they mean another passionate. Stop that. So, Vehuel is grandeur, overcomes sorrow, yada yada yada. Those born under Vehuel will have a sensitive and generous nature. They will be held in esteem and will distinguish themselves in literature, jurisprudence, and diplomacy. I don't know what jurisprudence is. I should probably have known this. I've heard the term before, but I don't know what it is, and I don't have my phone over here. I left it over there, and I'm too lazy to get up and go look it up. So look it up yourself. Not to be rude. So they are this. Vehuel is the sole guardian of those born from 4 to 4:20 p.m. The physical guardian of those born from November 15th to 19th. And the moral guardian of those born February 19th, May 7th, July 18th, September 28th, and December 9th. Probably a good one to call Vehuel. I honestly just grandeur overcomes sorrow and contrariness and provides exaltation of oneself. Vehuel might be one to call on if you're feeling like shit and you just need a boost. You need to get some self-love in. You're just like, God, feeling so shitty, and you just want to get some rapture. No, wait. That's the wrong word. Rapturous? Honestly, rapturous feelings, like in that, oh, I feel amazing, I feel great. It's like, I'm pretty sure I think that's the word I'm looking for, but I've also been listening to people who have, learning about people who have rapture PSTD from Christian cults or Christianity in general. Yeah, so I didn't really want to use that word. Yeah, if you're feeling like shit, down on yourself, and you just need to like get out of your own head, you're just trying to do some self-care, some self-love, and just perk yourself back up, Vehuel might be a good one to call on. Because they're like, hey, guess what? Exaltation of oneself. That screams self-love to me, or I don't know, exaltation. Yeah. Alright, so an esteem boost. Someone to help with that is Vehuel. Alright, moving on. The next part is from the Fantasy World Tarot. We have our Bean for the Eight of Wands, and Vera Potrank went with the Hydra, which I find very interesting. So on this card, we've got a big purple, pink, and yellow going from the top down, multi-headed dragon. Kind of looks like a dragon with the horn nose and the frills and lovely sharp spiky teeth. All up in the sky, huge freaking thing, kind of towering over this little bitty corner here of cliffside with a teeny tiny medieval knight. He's so cute. He's holding up his little sword and shield, like, I'll fight you, and this great giant ass beast is like, is that a morsel down there? I think I see a crumb. Which is hilarious. And this card is hilarious. So the Hydra, more specifically, the Lernaean Hydra, or the Hydra of Lern, or the Hydra of Lerna. Sorry. So the Lernaean Hydra. Hydra is actually the short form, the nickname. And it's called that because, it's called the Lernaean, or the Lernaean Hydra, or the Hydra of Lerna, because it lived in Lake Lerna. Go figure. The Hydra was the offspring of Typhon and Echidna. Typhon, I know, is one of the titans of the ocean. Echidna, I think she was the mother of monsters, or one of the other big monsters. She might have been the whirlpool one. I don't remember. But the Hydra was the offspring of both of them. And the Hydra, interestingly enough, I didn't know this, was actually raised by Hera specifically to kill Hercules. So we know, and I'll get to that in a minute. So we know the Hydra was one of the 12 labors of Hercules. It was apparently supposed to be 10, but, and the Hydra was actually his second labor. And the reason it ended up being 12 instead of 10 is because, for example, this one, and I guess there was another one, he had help with. So, the Hydra, Hercules realized when he was chopping off its head, it's a many-headed snake or dragon or what have you. And basically when Hercules was chopping off its heads, another two would grow in its place. Apparently the reproduction of heads was slightly a later addition, but meh. That's what we know. Basically, two would spring up in its place. So he called on his nephew, Iocles, I think it was, to come help him. And Iocles had the brilliant idea of burning the stumps so that a new head couldn't grow. So somebody else's idea, and then basically Hercules would chop a head off. Iocles would come in there with a brander and like burn in the stump, caustic, whatever it was. Cauterize, that's the word. Cauterize the stump. I know it wasn't castrate. Jeez. Would cauterize the stump so nothing could grow, and eventually Hercules chopped all the heads off, and he finally chopped off the final, middle, main one, which, after he chopped it off, was still alive, so he stuck his spear in it and buried it under a rock, or in between a couple of rocks or something. And it was still alive. A bodiless head. And then, of course, he dipped his arrows in the venom. I forgot. I skipped that part. Okay, so, backtracking a bit. The Hydra is also, it was extremely venomous. Its breath was poisonous, and its blood was so toxic that just the smell could kill you. Just the smell of the blood was deadly. So how in the world Hercules... Oh, wait, yeah, he had a... Hercules, apparently, when he was fighting, tied a cloth over his face. I don't... Either that was a very good cloth, or the smell and toxicity wasn't as toxic as it was claimed to be. Because then, of course, he gets close enough and dips his arrowheads in the poison, in the Hydra's poisoned blood, and uses that in his other labors. But because his nephew helped him, the dude who he was doing the labors for was like, that doesn't count. So it ended up being 12 instead of 10. And Hera, of course, was pissed off because she raised this lovely little baby to just kill this guy, and he killed it. It's horrible. Anyway, so that's the story of the Hydra. Kind of a little bit of information about the Hydra. So, what is it doing on the Eight of Wands? Good question. I never know the answer. I just come up with it. I literally come up with all this stuff as I'm talking. It's probably a bad way of doing it, but meh. So, we want to think first. The Eight of Wands, very much associated with Mercury through both Kabbalah and the Hermetic, the Golden Dawn astrology. Associated with Mercury, with swiftness, with speed. So you're thinking, Hydra, many heads. You know how that saying, 2 heads are better than 1? Well, 8, 9 heads are, well, it's unknown. It's never been quite clear how many heads the Hydra had. Everybody said something different, but 9 is the most well known. 9 heads are definitely better than 1, or even 2. So you've got that speed, that thought, that processing going on very quickly between multiple different brains. Now, depending on your view of multi-headed beings, whether each head is a separate, is kind of its own separate brain personage, or whether they're all kind of a hive mind type deal. But if we want to put it more in the hive mind type deal, then you got 8 brains going, or 9 brains going at once, or, well, 8 if it's 8 of Wands. So that's a lot of very fast thinking. And then we've got the fire, so the destructive aspect of the Hydra. And then, of course, like I was just talking with the Hush Tarot, that brain, it's HOD, the logical thinking brain, the processor, the part that's running through all the paperwork and trying to get through all the stuff that we've been through. It's that fight of the brain, just like everything going on at once, anxiety stuff of 1,000 different thoughts running all at once, running a mile a minute, in different directions. So the Hydra, I see this one more as, honestly, this one in particular, I'd see this almost as more of anxiety, or maybe even bad news coming. So if we're thinking back to the astrology with it being a message, it's like, and maybe this one came up, I mean, this one might actually be bad news, or it's good news disguised to look as bad news, or it just seems like it's bad news, but it'll eventually be good, like farther down the line. Because Hercules had to go through a lot of fucking shit, but he came out all the better for it. So we could tie that into this. Is like, okay, it's gonna look really bad here for a while, but we have the little knight here. It's like you can fight through this tangled mess of stuff, and it's gonna be moving quickly, and it's happening now. There's no holdback with this. With the Eight of Wands, it's all about the speed, the movement. It's like there's no slow build planning. This is stuff that's happening now. Here, go, and it's all this mess in your way that you've got to cut through and work through. And yeah, it looks overwhelming. I mean, like, that knight is maybe as big as one of the fins on the Hydra's head. Actually, not even that. Like, maybe as tall as its teeth. Fangs. More specifically, its fangs. But it's like, goddamn, you look at this shit like, that knight ain't going anywhere. But he's still raising his sword, holding his shield up. It's like, it might look like absolutely impossible, but he's still gonna fight through it. And she's still gonna go. They're still gonna, like, you know what? I'm gonna face down this monster, and I'm going to do my best, and I will win. I'm gonna believe I'm gonna win, because, yeah, you know, they might get eaten, but Z also might succeed. Might win. Hercules defeated it once. It's like, who's to say somebody else couldn't? So, this card would be very much, things are going to look scary, but you got this. You're going to have to fight, but just do your best. Outcome would be determined by other cards, I think. Alright, so that's all the different parts. So let's wrap this up with the traditional keyword meanings for the Eight of Wands. I got my mystical cat's tarot here. So we've got 3 cats, a gray, black, well, silver and a black and white tuxedo one, sitting on top of a counter, staring wide-eyed at the Ginger Tom, who is, he's got the zoomies. He's like bouncing off a rug, and that rug is getting all folded up, and he's like ready to yum. So you know how animals get the zoomies, they just go back and forth everywhere. This is the zoomies card. So, and the traditional keywords are swift moving energy, a burst of activity, speed, and movement. Basically, so all the stuff we've been talking about. This is fast moving. This is definitely a mercurial card. It's fast moving. It's going. It's speed, movement. Whether it's we've got the physical aspect that we had in the astrology. We've got the fire, the burst of activity. It's like now. While I have said that the fire feeling I get from this is kind of meticulous and deliberate and organized, you do have to remember it's also very fast, and even that organization of lightning strike is very random and chaotic looking because it's just taking the easiest path. So maybe deliberate and organized isn't necessarily what I mean. It just, well, maybe it is. So if you think about computer processing, it's moving extremely freaking fast. And sometimes your own brain is moving like ridiculously fast, and you're like, how did I get from point A to point C? Well, from point A to point Z before I remembered getting to point B. That kind of stuff. It's like you went all through to 26, and then you're gonna have to, and then sometimes, I don't know who else does this, but sometimes you're like, you reach the conclusion, you're like, wait, how did I get to this conclusion? You got to work your way backwards, or go back to the beginning and kind of work through it slower. This is that jumping from A to Z instantaneously type movement. It's like there is a process behind it, and there is a logic behind it, because, again, this HOD, the logical rational thinking mind, it's just the speed with this is just so fast. It's like sometimes we gotta like go back and like, how did I get there? And think it through and like, okay, that makes sense. I just did it. I just went through that sequence without actually thinking about it. That kind of stuff. So the upright, swift moving energy is just going. In reverse or inverse, it's stop. No. It's like, no, this isn't gonna happen. Just stop. Hold back a second. Stuff's a disaster. You're not gonna get anywhere if you try to move forward right now. It's a complete derailment of where you were going, what you were doing. It's like, train was on the tracks, and train's off the tracks. In reverse, this is the train's off the tracks. It's also kind of a Murphy's Law in action. So Murphy's Law is nothing is ever as easy as it looks. Everything takes longer than you expect, and if anything can go wrong, it will at the worst possible moment. And yes, that is on a plaque by my front door, which is why I was looking off to the side, because I was reading it. Got that from my my maternal grandmother's personal effects when she passed away. Because it was just too perfect. It's just like, I need a plaque that has Murphy's Law on it. I really do. And I just, front door. Both the apartments I've lived in with my sister so far, and I'll probably always, I think I will always keep it hanging by the front door so you see it every time you go out. Or you do if you're paying attention. Anyway, so yeah, the inverse of the Eight of Wands is kind of just that, whoa, stop, hold your horses, everything went off the tracks. Yeah, we're going too fast, and now there's a disaster. Alright, so that is the Eight of Wands. Lots of fun. So next week we will be diving into Pisces, and the week after that it will be, I know this, the Chariot. So yay, fun times. Lots of energy cards this week. Lots of energy cards this month, but coupled with Pisces, which is not at all very energetic. Speaking of which, by the time this comes out and y'all see it, I hope y'all had a great Pisces new moon. I I don't know what I'm going to do for this Pisces new moon. I want to do something, but I don't know what. It's an interesting one. Go look up the astrology behind it from your favorite astrologer. It's actually pretty fascinating because it's conjunct with the Sun and Neptune and Venus, and there's a lot about that which I'm not going to bother trying to say because I can't remember. But it's fun. Just go look up some stuff on it. Or if you have it, this was coming out after it, so maybe it'll help explain some of the stuff that maybe went on yesterday or whenever previous that you're viewing this. But anyway, that's it for today. Sign off. Y'all have a great rest of your whatever. I'll see you next time. All right, bye.